Right. Hello and welcome. We are so excited to read The Revolution with everyone tonight. We are talking about one of my favorite genres, young adult literature. So tell us where you're coming from in the chat and tell us what you're reading. Right now, we are in really loaded, heavy times, and we love to come back to our favorite stories. And a lot of our favorite stories are young adult stories from when we were younger, from the memories that we've created with these stories, the bonds that we've created with these characters. So again, join us in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from and what you're reading. We're also going to go over a few rules of the road. We do ask that you don't spam the chat, you don't troll in the chat, you keep it friendly. Approach with curiosity and assume best intent of each other so that we can have a comfortable, cool, great conversation in the chat. Notably, we are heavy-handed on the ban hammer, so if you are trolling, spamming, or just otherwise being a jerk, we're going to cut it off. If you need closed captions to enjoy the conversation, make sure you join us on Facebook. Facebook does have captions. Other platforms are still catching up. So again, if you need closed captioning to participate in the conversation or to follow along, make sure you join us on Facebook. All right. We got a lot of people coming in. We are Divergent Trilogy on repeat. Understandable. All right. The End of This Day's Business by Catherine Burdikin. Machiavelli. Heavy reading for heavy times. Right. Big ups to Norma Wong. Just finished When Nothing Works, or When No Thing Works by Norma Wong. Got a friend from Philly. Hey, Mary. Reading Flamers by Mark Corrado. All right, no video on YouTube. Hate that for us. Right. Let's see. Tower of Dawn, or the Crawdads sing, and Lobisona. Hey. Well, you'll be thrilled to get to see and meet with our guest tonight. Echoes and Onyx. Very cool. We got some people coming from Houston, H-Town. All right, and San Antonio too. Got Texas representing tonight. All right. Now, if you are having technical difficulties, go ahead and refresh your page. You can also try to join us on different platforms if one isn't working for you. Just find us at Women's March. Right. Hey, Long Beach, go Beach. I, too, have lived in Long Beach. It is great. All right. LA as well. West Coast represent. Hey, Philly. All right. Reading 50 Years of Miss. The Ninth House. Saying Inshallah with Chutzpah. Very cool. Right. I do love a light, cozy mystery. Lots of fun. I have to admit, I've been reading this for entirely too long, and I've been taking a lot of breaks because it's very heavy reading, but I'm also doing a deep read of it. It's called Attack from Within. It's on disinformation and how it has impacted our political world and really our lives as Americans. It's a big read. And let's see, who else do we have? We have Utah, Newark, San Diego, more West Coasters, Candace the Universe and Everything. Very cool. Right. We have a lot of readers. Really excited to have you here. The autobiography of Benjamin Franklin is wild. That man is sassy. Right. Summer I Turned Pretty. I hear such good things about A Summer I Turned Pretty. I need to get on that grind. Right. Now, do we have while we're in the chat, and since it's on topic tonight, tell us what your favorite young adult series is. What is the story that you come back to from your youth or that is actually young adult literature? talk to us about it here in the chat, because that's what we're going to be talking about tonight is young adult literature. Young adult literature has such a special place in the public consciousness and in our hearts, because more often than not, these are the stories that we grew up reading. And these are characters that we formed bonds with because we could relate to them. We could feel their feelings as we were growing up with them. But now, into adulthood, these stories resonate differently. And in moments of crisis, these stories and the themes of young adult literature speak to us in a new way. So we're going to be talking about that tonight, and we are joined tonight with two incredible authors that I am so thrilled are joining us. So welcome back to school with Young Adult Revolutionaries. I'm going to start by introducing our guest authors, Romina Garber and Tomi Adeyemi. Romina Garber is a New York Times and international best-selling author whose books include The Castle of the Cursed, Lobisona, Cazadora, The Zodiac Quartet, and the upcoming The Last Vampire. Watch out for it this December. Born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and raised in Miami, Florida, Romina landed her first writing gig as a teen, College She Wrote, a weekly Sunday column for the Miami Herald that was later picked up for national syndication. And she hasn't stopped writing since. She's a graduate of Harvard College and a Virgo to the core. In addition to her writing, Romina offers publishing consultations, book coaching, and manuscript editing services. Next, named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people, Tomi Adeyemi is a Hugo and Nebula Award-winning writer, actress, and model based in New York City. After graduating from Harvard University with an honors degree in English literature, she wrote the groundbreaking instant #1 New York Times bestselling Legacy of Orisha series, which includes Children of Blood and Bone, Children of Virtue and Vengeance, and Children of Anguish and Anarchy. Tomi's trilogy is being developed into a feature film and has sold over 3 million copies around the world. When she's not writing, Tomi enjoys teaching a writing masterclass at thewritersroadmap.net. So join me in welcoming our authors, Tomi Adeyemi and Romina Garber.
Hi.
Hello.
All right. So we like to start these conversations by laying a foundation about how important reading is in a moment like this. Stories aren't neutral, especially young adult stories. They shape how we see power, justice, and what's possible. In your view, how does reading itself become a political act?
So I think to start off, it would be good to establish that growing up, Tomi and I, we really didn't see ourselves reflected in the fantasy stories we love to read. So I think what both of us did was we kind of created magical universes where we wouldn't just be welcome, but we could be the heroes, you know? And so I think in a way, our stories are our revolution. And so inherently reading them is revolutionary.
I think that's beautiful. It's something that struck me when you asked that question is how reading is the most intimate conversation you could have with another human being's heart and their soul. Like there is nothing more intimate than that. And reading is so many things. It's a personal revolution. It's an external revolution. It's portals to fantasy lands. It's windows to other realities, and it's mirrors of the world we live in. But I think at this point in my career, what I'm truly struck by is that intensely intimate conversation and connection, because I feel like I've been so blessed in this career because of all the people I get to meet. But when I meet them, we're meeting here. Like I don't know any other vocation in which every person that I really connect, like besides some people online, but I'm a sassy Leo, so that's okay. For the vast majority of people in real life, it's just this really tender soul connection. And it always leaves me with so much faith in humanity, even though objectively the world has gotten darker and darker and darker since I became a public author. But I have never connected to more humans. I've never seen more beautiful spirits. And especially when it comes to how it feels to be a woman right now. And just when we get together and the encouragement we give each other and the joy, and I guess I'm obsessed with that right now. I'm obsessed with our spirits. And I think, I don't want to say that, I think reading is so revolutionary because it allows us to have the most intimate conversations about the worst parts of the human experience. And Romina, I'd love to hear your take on this. I know for me, the stories I write, they always start from a place of fear or sadness or brokenness. And by the time I'm done with that story, I go through like my own revolution and I feel so different. And then I step out into the world and I get to share those stories. And I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm rambling now because I'm really excited. So I'm just going to throw it back to Romina, but I definitely think it's
I love what you just said about it being this most intimate interaction, because you're so right. It's like we're opening up our hearts, our brains, like bleeding it onto the page and sharing it with another soul or many souls. And it's so intimate, there really is no filter. Like it is just like your insides, like laid bare. And something cool that like came to mind while you were saying all that is the other cool thing, and because we're writing for teens in particular, is I feel like it's like at that age and as we're growing up, kind of used to seeing obviously the world through our own eyes and our perspective, and we are the center of our own universe. And reading puts you in other people's shoes, and the more different that person, the more you're learning to empathize and see the world from someone else's perspective, which broadens your own worldview, but also is like teaching us that we live in this like matrix of intersecting identities and realities. And so we become sort of more aware that ours is not the definitive nor the default perspective. Rather, we're one piece of it. And it's such a cool personal thing, like you were saying, and in that it is a revolution, especially in these dark days, because we are welcoming everyone into that tent, being our heart, and our mind. And we're sort of defying, what much of this administration stands for.
That's incredibly powerful. The depth of connection that you as authors get to share with your readers. And in addition to your hearts, the connection that you create and the pieces of yourself that you inject into the page, I wanted to ask about the worlds that you create, because the worlds of YA, fantasy, and dystopia are often exaggerated versions of our own. You're drawing from our experiences within this world. And in the world's building that you do, you're amplifying the cracks in our society so we, as the readers, can see them more clearly. Where do you draw inspiration as you build these kinds of worlds, and how can readers better identify these parallels?
Yeah, I know something. I've been writing since I was really young, but one of the biggest differences between everything I wrote for, I don't know, maybe 15 years and Children of Blood and Bone was, for the first time, I was writing about how I felt in this world. And at that time, it'd been about 5 years of my heart, about the way I saw the world shattering and my heart breaking and bleeding and having so much anger, but having so much fear, because I'd gone from thinking we had made advances. Saying advances in racism sounds very weird. I just thought we'd made societal improvements. I thought things were better. At the very least, I thought that my life wasn't going to be in danger, and my father's life wasn't going to be in danger, and my brother's life and my mother's life and my sister's life wasn't going to be in danger because of the color of our skin. I thought we had safely left those in the black and white photos from the 50s. But when I was a freshman in college, that's when Trayvon Martin was murdered. And that was just the first of a heartbreaking cycle of just seeing young Black boys and Black girls and Black mothers and Black fathers just brutally murdered or choked or gunned down. And again, it wasn't just that was happening. Because of social media, we were seeing it. And I think that's something, I know it's talked about, but it's something I'm consistently reflecting on, because the human condition has always been one of a great turmoil, but we're in a period now where you're seeing all that turmoil just back to back to back to back to back to back to back on your feed. And years of seeing anybody murdered is not okay, especially right here. But for me, years of seeing that again and again and again, it really broke me. And when I started writing Children of Blood and Bone, there was a desire to emotionally share the fear that I felt just every day getting up or getting in my car or trying to go to the grocery store. And there was also almost a need to organize all the pain that I saw in my country and the world into this fantasy. Like some sort of, if I can bring organization to it, maybe there's a path to healing it. And this goes in line with what Romina said about us all living in these sort of matrices of our own experiences, because I can't say, oh, I wrote this book and millions of people read it and we no longer have racism or police brutality. I cannot say that. What I can say is I have interacted with thousands of hearts who are not just people who look like me, who feel seen and understood, but so many people who don't look like me, who feel passionate about the issues that are affecting me and who want me to feel safe, who want others who look like me to feel safe and seen and represented. I think it's not the simple math equation that I hoped it was when I was in my early 20s. But at this point in my life, I do see something really beautiful and meaningful about that, about all of those individual connections and conversations and changed hearts, and the way people are still picking up the story for the first time today and being like, I feel like you're writing about right now. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. And sometimes they feel like I'm writing about right now, but it's not about Black people being marginalized. It's about what's happening overseas. It's about the rights of women being taken away now. I think right now we live in a society that is not necessarily working to make life better for the people that come after us. And the opposite of that is watching something consistently destroy itself and make things harder for everyone and everyone who comes after. So I think that's another reason these stories of I'll say young people, but I think what makes and I'll stop talking after a second. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was this passionate. Like I should have known I was passionate, but some self-reflection is important. I think the reason these stories resonate is because young people are passionate and they care about the world. I think that the youngest reader I've met has been 8. The oldest reader I've met has been 80. And so when I think of young adult literature, I think, well, here's a character who sees the world and is not just going to accept it. Their spirits aren't broken, their minds are broken. And I think we need that at every age, because I just think it's so important to keep fighting. I think it's important to fight smartly, if that's a word. I'm an author, but Romina, I'm gonna pass it because I'll just keep going.
No, that was beautiful, and I completely agree with you. And it made me, so it made me think there's this moment in Lovisona where Manu asks Perla, her surrogate grandmother, why so many South American authors write magical realism into their books. And she says, sometimes reality strays so far from what's rational that we can only explain it through fantasy. And I really feel like, you know, our worlds, like all these books that we write, it's sort of like fantasy is this ideal medium for communicating like these politically charged, potentially polarizing ideas. And I think they allow us to sort of allegorize the world. I'm like now questioning my vocabulary, so I'm like a writer. The world so that like we can like tackle these subjects by removing their charge a little bit, you know, like my Zodiac series, you know, it's like, it basically has like 12 different planetary systems or houses that are each one based on the Zodiac signs, but they're all sovereign nations. And, you know, it might seem a little bit like silly to divide up by zodiac sign and to not trust each other of different zodiac signs, but it is truthfully a little bit what goes on in our own planet. Countries are sovereign nations, and we do have trouble working together and trusting each other, and you know, for the better good, for the good of our whole planet. You know, that the whole idea of what happens in one part of the world will always affect those on the other. And like we still haven't quite learned that we're all sort of different beads on the same necklace, you know. And I think like using these kind of images and these notions, like it's a little bit easier to get that lesson in. And I don't just, like Tomi was saying, like it's not even just teens, like it could be readers of any age. Like in fact, you know, it's like I think it's harder as you get older because we've seen more, we've experienced more, we know more of the world, you know, and so these kind of stories allow us to experience things or to view them at a remove, and that small space we create really, I think, helps move that conversation, like Tomi was saying.
So you're touching on it quite a lot. So I want to go deeper on this idea of, you know, why young adults. So young adult heroines often stand at the edge of childhood and adulthood, and they're caught in a phase of transformation and discovery. Why do you think these characters capture our imagination so powerfully? And what makes young adult literature such a compelling space to explore urgent political and social questions specifically?
So I kind of like, I always say this, so I'm just going to say, Tomi's heard me say it, but like, I really love writing for teens because they're not closed off to the notion that things can be different, that the world can be changed. I think as we get older, it becomes a little harder and we're more bogged down. We have a mortgage, we have a job, we have children, we have different things. And it's a little bit harder to be a martyr for something, you know, or to really risk everything. But you know, like Katniss, Triss, Zelly, Ro, Manu, like all of these, like they're examples of how one person's resistance can change the world. And I think what makes their actions and the characters so inspiring is because they are taking on the system to improve things for all of us, you know? And so I think this ignites hope. And you know, once it spreads, hope is a hard flame to put out. And so I really think it's the most powerful tool for change in our arsenal. And that's why I think they really resonate so much. But I'll let Tomi talk. I feel like we've been going kind of long on these.
I think, again, and my answer changes the more I experience life, because I always, even as a teenager, was so captivated by young adult. And I remember like freshman year of college being in an English literature class, and everyone was like, I what's your favorite book? And they're like, The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner, and The Great Gatsby. And no one had an accent, but that's how it felt to me. And I was the girl in there, be like, I like The Chamber of Secrets. What you gonna say? So I have always had just a fascination with it. And it was, I think at that age, it was just the magic of everything and the wonder. There's something so special about that. At this age, now that I've gone through at least a stage of adulthood or a few stages, I realize how much our inner child stays with us if we're lucky. I realize how much healing is necessary. I can't count the number of Black women, both dark skin and light skin, who have come up to me and said, I wish I had this book when I was growing up. You have no idea what it would have done for me. And I'm like, I actually know exactly what it would have done for you. And I don't mean that in like, no, honey, I actually know. I mean like, no, I get it. I get it, because growing up loving these stories and not seeing myself in them, I spent 10 years writing stories with protagonists that were white or biracial. And I didn't share my stories with anyone. So by the time I was 18 and I realized I was doing this, I was just like, oh my gosh, you subconsciously internalize that you're not allowed to be in your own imagination, because you're not on any of these screens, you're not on any of these covers, you're not on any of these magazines. Like, oh, that's not good. That is really not good. And I've been telling that story for so many years. And I remember I would tell people I've spent less time writing with myself in my imagination than I have writing myself out of it. It's finally the opposite. I have consciously spent more time writing characters and protagonists who look just like me versus the opposite. And that's been so empowering. And I've spent 12 years healing my inner child and letting her know with every page, every magazine shoot, every interview, every poster, I'm like, oh, you belong here. You've always belonged here. And then this weekend, I just did an event and I met a mother, and she got all 3 books for her son. Her son is 9 years old. And she was like, this is going to be the first time he sees a book get turned into a movie. And I was just like, that I've been saying, like, I was like, when the next generation never has to know that they weren't the star, like I was like, it's happening. Like, so I think being able to not only talk to the children of today, but also to heal and be there for the inner child who still lives and exists inside of all of us, and who we can finally be there for. Because, okay, when I was a little girl, I wasn't able to be like, hey, Tomi, I'm so sorry you don't see yourself, but here are questions to ask. Here's resources. Here's this. I didn't have that self-awareness or capability, but to be able to go now and be like, hey, Tomi, I'm going to hold your hand and we're going to write all these stories and our face is going to be everywhere. We're going to take so many sexy photos. Ooh, wow, bam. Yeah. Now it's like, okay, so that's my current theory as to why these stories and protagonists touch everyone, regardless of their age.
Now, Romina, you did touch on hope as a kind of holding point, as an anchor for a lot of these young adult characters. And that theme of transformation and discovery and really holding on to hope in times of crisis is incredibly relevant at this moment, because right now we are navigating a time of mass upheaval. We're experiencing a climate crisis. We are watching a descent into authoritarianism, censorship, systemic violence. How can young adult heroines help us imagine new ways of resisting, surviving, and building something better?
Yeah, that is hard. So it's interesting because I have a little bit of Tomi's experience where, like, my book also came, Lobisona came out like in 2020, and people read it today and they're like, was this just published? And it does get a little sad because you do put this stuff out there in hopes of what you're saying, inspiring hope, like trying to pass on that torch, in hopes it'll at some point transcend the page and come into our world. And it feels like you feel defeated a bit when you see you're not just back where you were before, but arguably worse. The first scene of Lovisona, there's an ice raid. And the main character, Manu, she is undocumented. And I remember receiving emails back when it first came out from people saying they thought it was dystopian. Like they didn't realize, because her reality is just such a far cry from their own, that they didn't think it was set in the real world in contemporary times. And that's a privilege, right? Like that, but at the same time, like I don't mean that in a negative way at all. It means like someone had their eyes open, they were privileged enough not to know of that experience, but now you do. And so now the question is, what are you going to do about it? Like the next time you hear conversations and somebody call someone illegal, how are you going to make a difference? Like, how are you going to use what you've learned or experienced by being in Manu's shoes and experiencing her life through this, kind of empathy incubator that is this book, and what did that leave with you? And if you're going to stand up and say like, that's not an appropriate label for a human being, then hopefully there was a little bit of a ripple of change from this character and this story. And as we know, ripples with enough, impact and enough of them and enough force, they become waves and waves of change. And so, I think I kind of use the example of Lobisona and how it a little bit balances real world with fantasy, but in a way to illuminate us, so like, for example, I base Lobisona in a real world law that's still in effect today in Argentina. You can Wikipedia it, and it's La Ley de Padrinazgo Presidencial, and it states that the president of Argentina becomes godparent to the seventh consecutive son or daughter in any family. And you might be like, that's a strange law. Well, it is, because it harkens back to a time when people believed that the seventh son or seventh daughter would be a werewolf. And so the fact that such an outrageous belief took root in a population enough so that it was concretized into a law gives you a sense of the power of words and labels. And so, in a similar sense, you think about this term illegal and how it negates a person's humanity and worth. And it's not all that surprising that it's led to families being separated and children being caged, and all the horrors that have happened, because sort of language has opened that door a little bit. And so, I kind of hope to draw this parallel to that. And, another part of the story is that my parents met in Argentina at the end of the Guerra Sucia, which was the time when dissidents were disappeared overnight. And to this day, the abuelas de Plaza de Mayo continue to march in search of their lost grandchildren, the grandchildren who were taken and just sold off or given to other families, and they never even knew. So, I think it's important that we keep these stories alive through our fiction. I think that is kind of how we inspire this hope. And hopefully by keeping that history alive, we can make sure that it doesn't happen again, that we can recognize the signs and stand up. And it's really hard to evaluate right now because we're in the thick of it, so we're hours away from a possible government shutdown, like it's really hard to see right now, to take a wide view. But the hope is that these stories will give us that sense that nothing is insurmountable, and we can fight back. And often our words are our best weapons, even if it doesn't seem like it. They are how we inspire hope. And again, hope is the most powerful emotion.
Yeah, I think in the way what we can take from our young adult protagonists and heroines in these times is that we have to be active. That is the one link between every protagonist that I have loved or admired in, yeah, I would say the past 10 to 13 years. Whether it's An Ember in the Ashes, whether it's Inej and Six of Crows, whether it's Ro or Zaylee, all of these characters live in societies where they are at the bottom and they are facing a really horrific world, a really horrific world. And it's interesting because growing up, the world didn't feel as horrific as at that time we called it dystopia. So I have to imagine we felt like we were in enough of a utopia for stories like The Hunger Games to feel like a dystopia. Now it's like you said, you wrote when kids were being put in cages. Now I go on TikTok and I scroll from a body roll to tanks running, like rolling down the street, and all these ICE agents. And I think what's important is to actually look at it, not shut your eyes to it, not put your head under a pillow, not lose yourself in all these random internet arguments. I think it's important to look at the world and take it for what it is and actually make plans and make changes. And I know that looks different for everybody based off what resources you have, whether you're on your own, whether you're married, whether you have children, whether you have elderly parents. I know that looks different for everyone. But I think what's important to do in this time is to be alive and to be active. Don't take so much of it in that you just get broken down and battered and can't move, but figure out what's happening. Make a plan for yourself, make a short-term plan, make an emergency plan, really take care of yourself. And then I guess when your fortress is good, think about what's something I can do to help this. Because what that is, it's going to do something. When all of the police brutality killings were being publicized, I never felt comfortable being someone that was on the street and protesting or laying down at a die-in. I remember I tried it and I felt awful. I felt so much anxiety. I felt so afraid. It wasn't the right way for me to fight. When I wrote, that was the way for me to fight. And again, I can't look at the world and be like, oh my God, it's so much better. Or, well, it didn't change when Children of Blood and Bone came out, but then George Floyd came out, and then all these initiatives, which were just rolled back. I've stopped looking for salvation in society at large. I more look at the individual, and I've seen so many powerful individual stories. So I think that's what I would want someone to take from Zaylee. I wouldn't say it's up to you to fight the entire world. I would say figure out how to protect yourself, how you're going to protect your family, what you're going to do when/if this goes a lot more sideways, and then figure out what is the way that I can fight against this or that I can support other people through this. I think if you're taking care of yourself and you're doing one thing to use your voice or connect or your resources or your gifts or your talents to actually make society better or something better for just one other person on this planet, I think you're doing amazing.
This has really been a powerful conversation tonight. I am like struggling to like find new ways of saying how powerful your thoughts are. So, and you actually, you talked about one of the questions that I had queued up because we do live in overwhelming news cycles. And these news cycles are designed to fatigue us into apathy and to demonstrate that one person isn't enough to make a difference. And we do see this play out as a trope in young adult literature of refusing the call and this is, I mean, this transcends young adult too. This is a fantasy trope. This is a major trope in literature in general, refusing the call and throwing in the towel when it's all too much. So how do you think young adult heroines inspire readers to push beyond that? How do we see that play out in, you know, in our books and in our lives, to push beyond fear and disappointment and overwhelm and apathy, because it's everywhere around us?
I mean,
go for it.
I think, Risa, what you said, especially at the beginning of that question, how these news cycles are designed to fatigue us and overwhelm us, I think it is so important to be really intentional about what you're exposing yourself to. We know way more than I think we were ever supposed to know. I think sometimes I was like, like a king 500 years ago did not see as many people in one day as we see just sitting on our couch scrolling through TikTok. It's a lot. And when so much of it is deeply, deeply horrific and tragic, it took me a while to say who benefits from me feeling this way, because there's being informed and then there's being overwhelmed. And I think the vast majority is just overwhelming. So I think it's important to know what's going on, but I also think it's important to just protect your heart space, protect your psychological spaces, protect your ability to feel like the sky hasn't fallen every day when you wake up, because you have to keep waking up. And I'll leave it there, but I just wanted to mention that because it's just something it's something I've been really cognizant of in my own life, and realizing like I want to be intentional about the ways I make a difference, but I also want to make sure my life is truly governed by what's happening in my real life. If there's a fire, I want it to be in my real life. If there are people I need to help, I want it to be in my real life. I'm not saying the digital connection and these conversations and this information isn't useful, but there's definitely a threshold. There's definitely a tipping point, and we can be fairly honest. None of these systems or algorithms are, at best, they're designed for capitalism, and at worst, they're designed to completely destroy us. So I think it's really important, especially when all you see is the sky falling, to be really plugged into your real life and what happens, not on your computer screen, not on your phone, but when you wake up and when you go outside. And yeah, I guess I think that's just important for me to say, because I think it's so easy to get lost in the digital.
I agree with that. And I would add that, these heroines, like they don't know what they're supposed to do. They only know what they can do. And that's the thing. They do what they can. And a lot of times they get it wrong, but they're always, their heart is in the right place. And the other thing is, like, they don't do it alone. Like, they all reach out and they have friends they trust and other people, and they form networks. And so, I think it's important for us to remember that when we start to feel that way, and, that kind of overwhelming sensation and that kind of feeling of defeat, that we're not alone, that if we're feeling this, a lot of people are too, and we can reach out, and we should reach out, because it is so increasingly isolating to be doom scrolling, and just like, it can just be really suffocating. And so in those moments, like, reaching out to someone else, and you don't have to have all the answers, but together you might come up with better ones than if you're just sitting there letting like the bad news like slip through you. So yeah. And I love what Tomi said about just like taking action and doing what feels right to you, like, because don't let others can feel like there can be this pressure, for you to do what other people are doing. And like Tomi said, that's not going to help anybody, least of all you. You need to know what feels right to you and be honest with yourself, you know, and we have to get rid of the whole performative nature of all this stuff. It is not going to get us where we want to be.
Absolutely. So we have one more question queued up on my side, and then we're going to go to chat questions. So my last question for you. Many YA heroines start out as ordinary kids who discover that they're anything but. That moment of realizing you're not just a regular person is both inspiring and destabilizing. What do you think that tension of being relatable yet extraordinary offers to readers right now?
You're all extraordinary. And I once had someone argue that. They're like, Tomi, everyone's not extraordinary. And I'm like, if you push, yes, you are. Yes, you are. As Romina was talking, Romina was I think maybe the only person in my life. This is when I was still trying to get a literary agent, when I was working on a book 4 years before Children of Blood and Bone. Romina literally took me and looked in my eyes and was like, Tomi, you're going to get published. You are going to do this. So I want you to enjoy this time right now because you're never going to get it back. Like, talk about a more YA mentory, like, you know, like Yoda, but with your hair, Romina. Like, she looked at me and she said this crazy dream, which in itself is its own young adult contemporary novel that like is my life, with lots of magic. But yeah, she was like, you're gonna do this. And I think of all of the girls or the women that I get to meet and talk to, the girls who dream of being writers, or the women who have always dreamed of being writers and are finally realizing, you know what, I should get back to that journal. And I'm like, yes, you should, because you know how many stories you have to tell, the life you've lived, especially individually. So I think that destabilizing tension, for me, I love anything that makes life glitter. I love anything that makes life glitter. I will talk about the shadow. I will talk about the death. I will talk about the governments that are not there for us and everything despicable in this world and in the human condition and in the way we treat people. But I will also talk about the magic. I will also talk about the magic, and I will always encourage anybody who listens to me or reads me or wants to learn to be like me. I was like, find that magic because it still exists. They have not taken it away. They haven't taken it away. And I no longer even attempt to talk for the world at large, but I know what magic can do in someone's life. And I know, especially as women, we have this fascinating, fantastic ability to be completely destroyed and come back and not only change our lives and our communities, but actually the world. So I no longer fear the state of the world because I have learned the resilience of the human spirit, and specifically the female spirit. I'm going to give it to you, Romina.
Well, I'm going to throw some glitter back on you because when I finished the Zodiac series, it was like 2017, 2018, and I was at a very low point. You know, the news was constantly like people being stopped and caged, and I mean, it was horrible what was happening with immigrants and at the border. And I was I felt like I couldn't pick myself up. And I was FaceTiming with Tomi from my mother's house and just, you know, telling her just how I was feeling and that like I just did it, like I didn't know, you know, and Tomi reminded me, she's like, this is how we fight. You pick up your pen and you write, and all this stuff that you're feeling right now, all this hopelessness, this like horror that's taken over your heart, you let it out on the page and you go to war. And it was like, it was exactly everything I needed to hear. And from that came Lovisona. So, you know, it was just like, I mean, like what Tomi is saying about women and the power, it's like it really is one of those things that like it goes, you take it and you throw it back, and then you throw it back and you take it, and that is the best kind of support. And the fact that like we're living proof that we can do it, we can support each other, we can rise together. And there is absolutely magic in that, and I love it.
Thank you both. Like, I'm a little emotional. This is
I know, I'm excited.
right. And so it's so funny that, you know, when I reached out to both of you, I did not realize that you were such good friends. And so the fact that you know, we get to have this conversation with the both of you, and you know, that you are really demonstrating this powerful sisterhood that we can all be part of. The power of, you know, women to lift each other up and be in community together. It really is powerful. I keep coming back to the word powerful tonight, and I know there are other words.
Good word. Because even I think magic and power.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
what else but magic out of all the people you could have invited to this would cause you to invite us? Power.
Now, you are also both writers. You both also work with writers. So we do have a question in the chat from Kristen N. Are there any writing practices or exercises you do to express your feelings without the goal of writing a story? How does this help you or inform your writing overall?
Journal. I will fill up whole journals with nothing, with just like what I'm feeling in that moment. Like it's sort of like a way to exercise it out of myself. And if later on I'm reviewing this and a story comes, great. Most of the time though, my husband says I write in unbreakable code, because even I can't understand what I wrote if I wait too long to read it. So like I have to read it in the moment and then forget it. No one will ever understand it. They should have me writing the codes in like war, you know, like, yeah, journals are great. Also, writing by hand, incidentally, works a different part of your brain than typing. So it also is like generating more creativity in you.
Something I love when I'm falling asleep. I like most of my fan fiction is not committed to paper. So none of you can use it against me. I love when I'm falling asleep just to take a universe or something I love, and I will continue writing and replaying scenes from, it's almost like lore, like self lore that I have. It really never goes on the page. It's never seen by anyone. It never gets plotted out, but just for me to take the elements of story and creation. Because Risa, I love what you said about us being writers, because I think we both really, it's like we actually love the act of writing and we just love doing it. And that's something that's unique to, well, it's not unique to writers, but a lot of writers, you're writing for decades before you even consider that someone else might read it or that you might be able to do something like that. You just actually love the act of writing. So something that's become important at this stage in my career is just to keep that, I guess, more inner child work, little creative work, the same things 13-year-old Tomi was dreaming about and writing fan fiction about. A lot of it was about Wolverine, I'll be honest. I keep that going. I don't really tune into what the cinematic universe is because it's like, yo, I have a storyline that's been going 20 years back. It's really good. It's basically just me and Wolverine, but it's great. So that keeps me fresh, you guys. I hope that helps.
I mean, look, 50 Shades was fanfic. So, like, it goes places.
It goes places. It does.
Yeah. But that also reminds me, I think it was trending on TikTok that people are sharing their notes from their phone and none of it makes sense. It is just thought dumps and it's lots of them. So it really is like exercising whatever is happening up here. And there's always so much. So we do have another question too, and I think this may be our last one. How can I find more books by female authors, especially those of color and those that may not be cisgender or heterosexual? Where can I find authors that are not just on Amazon or even Bookshop?
I would say TikTok. I think TikTok is currently, and an emphasis on the word currently, the place of most discoverability from authors of all sides, whether it's like, whether you're literally Jodi Picoult or you just finished your first book and you've self-published it, like both of those authors are going to show up in my feed. And both of those have an equal chance of catching my attention, because that's an app that's designed for you to be exposed to new things. So I think if you're interested in that, you can just look up the hashtags. I know for Book Talk, there's hashtag Black Book Talk. And there's so many incredible, really passionate creators that'll be like 15 books to read if you want to read books, so they've already done the work for you and they're really passionate about it. And yeah, I think that's where I would direct you to go right now.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, I also do the like, I think I'm more on Instagram than TikTok, and someone that I follow whose recommendations I always love is Carmen, and her handle is Tomes and Textiles. And she's great. She always, like, there's some really interesting and very diverse reads. So I wish I could think of a few others right now, but of course, like on the spot, I can't. But
Well, while we are on it, we want to encourage our viewers tonight. Make sure you are following Romina and Tomi. They are at Romina Garber and at Tomi Adeyemi. They made it really easy for us because y'all are lucky enough to have caught your own names. Also, you can see more of their work at their websites, tomiadeyemi.com and rominagarber.com. Thank you all so much for being part of this incredible conversation tonight. We also have a lot of gratitude in the chat. Thank you, Romina and Tomi, for being with us tonight, for your works, for sharing your hearts with us. I personally am a really big fan of your books. So I'm so excited that we got to have this conversation and really dive in on the worlds of YA and their intersections with our own. For the viewers, make sure that you are following our guests on social media. Keep an eye on your emails. We will be sending a recap of any resources that were shared tonight. And next month, join us again, because we are going to be joining the fight against banned books and how the fight against banning books is core to the fight against tyranny. Thank you again for being with us, Romina and Tomi.
Thank you guys so much. I'm seeing so much love in the chat. You guys are wonderful.
I know, you guys are the best. Thank you.
It's been a thrill and a joy. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night.